This happened to me on Christmas Eve, 1998. I was 29 years old, driving a beat-up tempo for a small local courier company. We ran rush deliveries for law offices, pharmacies, small businesses, anything that needed to move fast and couldn't wait for the regular mail. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid by the run. And on a good night, I could clear an extra $60 or $70 in bonus pay on top of my base rate. That Christmas Eve, I needed every dollar of it. My daughter Emily was 6 years old, and she wanted a bicycle from the Sears on Glenstone, a purple one with streamers on the handlebars. I had it on layaway, $41 left to pay, and the store closed at 6. My wife Carol had already told me twice that morning, "You don't have to do this, Danny. We'll figure something out." But I wanted to walk in there myself and pay it off. I wanted to be the one who did that. Earlier that evening, before my shift even started, I'd sat in the break room eating a cold ham sandwich out of a paper sack while the other drivers filtered out one by one, calling out "Merry Christmas, Danny" on their way to the door. Gary Voss, one of the older guys, stopped by my table and asked if I wasn't heading home yet. I told him I had one more run in me. He just nodded like he understood, the way guys who'd been broke before understand, and left a folded $5 bill on the table next to my sandwich without saying anything about it. I still think about that. So when my dispatcher, a heavy-set guy named Pete Willard, asked if anybody would take one more run before the holiday, I raised my hand. Everybody else had already clocked out. It was just me and Pete in that little office with the space heater going and a plastic Christmas tree sitting on the filing cabinet, its lights blinking on a frayed cord that Pete kept meaning to replace. "You sure, Danny?" Pete asked. "It's clear out past Ash Grove somewhere, kind of a haul." "I'm sure," I said. I called Carol from the payphone outside the office before I left. Emily got on the line for a second. "Daddy, are you gonna be home before Santa comes?" I told her I would. I meant it. The route slip Pete handed me was handwritten, like all of them were back then. A name, J. Merrick, and an address out on County Road 96 past the edge of town where the streetlight stopped. The order was for a small parcel, already sealed, already paid for by the sender. All I had to do was drive it out and get a signature. Nothing unusual about that. We did dozens of runs exactly like it every week. The first strange thing happened before I even left the parking lot. Pete was looking at the slip as he handed it to me and he said, "Huh, Merrick, that's the same last name as the fella out on 96 who called in a complaint last month." "What complaint?" "Said somebody had been driving up and down his road late at night. Slow, like they were looking at houses. He filed it with the sheriff, I think." Pete shrugged. "Probably nothing. Small world, I guess. Merrick's not that uncommon a name out this way." I didn't think much of it. I climbed in the tempo, set the parcel on the passenger seat next to a little wrapped box, Emily's other present, a coloring set, small enough to fit in my glove box, and pulled out onto Highway 13. The roads were quiet. Christmas lights strung along porches in town, a few houses still lit up with those big colored bulbs. Silent Night playing low on the radio between commercials. It was cold enough that my breath fogged the windshield until the heater caught up. I remember thinking it was a nice night to be out, even working. There's something about Christmas Eve that makes even a quiet highway feel warm. That feeling didn't last past the county line. About 20 minutes out, the houses thinned to almost nothing, and my headlights were the only light for long stretches at a time. I checked the address against my paper road map, the kind you'd buy folded up at a gas station, because my odometer wasn't matching what Pete had written on the slip. The address said 4 miles past the Conoco station on 96. I'd gone almost 6. I pulled into a gravel turnout to check the map under the dome light, and that's when a truck came up slow behind me. Not fast, not aggressive. It just idled about 30 feet back, headlights on, not passing. I waited. It waited. After maybe a full minute, it pulled around me, slow, and the driver lifted 2 fingers off the wheel in that small country wave you give a stranger. Then it kept going down 96, same direction I was headed. I told myself it was nothing. Out here, that's just how people drive. Still, my hands were a little tighter on the wheel after that. I found the address about a mile further, a single-story farmhouse set back from the road, one porch light on, no Christmas decorations, no other cars in the drive. The mailbox at the end of the driveway had a different name stenciled on it than the one on my slip. It said Hollis, not Merrick. That gave me pause. I sat in the car a second, engine running, parcel on my lap, looking at that mismatched name. In this job, you learn that mailboxes and slips don't always match. Maybe it's a rental, maybe somebody's staying with family, maybe the name on file is just old. I'd seen it plenty of times, but something about the stillness of that house made me hesitate longer than I normally would have. I walked up anyway, knocked, nobody answered. I knocked again, and this time a woman's voice came from inside, muffled through the door. "Just leave it on the step, hon. I'm not decent." Older-sounding voice, a little raspy, not unkind. "I need a signature, ma'am," I said. "Company policy." A pause, then, "Slide the paper under the door." That struck me as odd, but I've had customers do stranger things. Folks who don't want to be seen in a housecoat, folks who are sick, folks who just don't want to deal with a stranger on Christmas Eve. I slid the signature slip under the door. A minute later, it came back under the door, signed in shaky handwriting. Something like E. Hollis. I left the parcel on the step like she asked and walked back to my car, and that's when I noticed the porch light across the road, at a house I hadn't seen pull in, was gone out. It had been on when I parked. Now it wasn't. I couldn't tell if somebody had just gone to bed or if somebody had been standing at a window. I got back in the car and sat there a second longer than I needed to. Something about the whole delivery felt off in a way I couldn't name yet. The name that didn't match. The voice that wouldn't open the door. The truck that had slowed down to look at me and then vanished ahead down the same road I was driving. Before I pulled out, I glanced down at the little wrapped coloring set on my passenger seat, the one I'd bought for Emily at the drugstore on a whim because it was on sale for $1.69. I thought about her waiting up, probably losing the fight against sleep by now, and for a second, the whole strange evening felt far away, like something I could just drive out of. I put the car in reverse to head back toward town, and my headlights swept across the yard next door, and for just a second, I saw a man standing near the tree line, maybe 40 yards off, not moving, just watching my car. By the time I'd turned around to look straight at him, he was gone. I couldn't even swear he'd been real. Out in the country at night, shapes play tricks. I drove back toward the Conoco station faster than I probably needed to. That's when the second strange thing happened. My radio, which had been playing Christmas music the whole drive, started catching static, cutting in and out the way it does out in the sticks with no repeater tower close by. Between the static, I caught a few seconds of a call-in request show, and the DJ read out a dedication. "This one goes out from a friend to Danny, working the roads tonight instead of being home with his family." I nearly ran off the shoulder. There are 100 guys named Danny in this part of Missouri. I told myself that. I told myself it a lot of times over the next few miles. But it was a small company, and I was, as far as I knew, the only driver still out on the road that night. Pete would have known that. Almost nobody else would have. I pulled into the Conoco station, the one lit-up building for miles, and used the payphone out front to call the office. Pete picked up on the second ring, sounding like he'd been about to leave. "Hey Pete, it's Danny." Weird question. Did anybody call in a request for me on the radio tonight? Like a dedication? There was a pause. What? No. Why would anybody do that? I told him what I'd heard. I told him about the mismatched mailbox, the woman who wouldn't open the door, the man in the trees. Pete went quiet in a way that made my stomach turn. "Danny," he said slowly, "there wasn't supposed to be an order out on 96 tonight. I checked the book before I called you up front. Remember? That slip I gave you came in by phone about 20 minutes before you left, from a number I didn't recognize. I just wrote it down like normal. Nobody double-checks a rush order on Christmas Eve. So who placed it?" "I don't know," he said. "But Danny, that complaint I mentioned about somebody watching houses out on 96, the deputy who took it told me the caller thought it might be somebody scouting places to break into once families left for the holidays. Empty houses, people traveling." I asked him to check the callback number on the slip again, read it out loud to me while I stood there with the phone cord stretched as far as it would go. A station wagon idling at the pumps behind me. Some kid inside pressing his face to the window at the lit-up sign. It was a Springfield Exchange, not a long-distance number at all. Whoever had called it in hadn't been calling from out by that farmhouse. They'd been calling from somewhere close, maybe somewhere close to me. I stood there at that payphone with the cold biting through my jacket, and I thought about it different than I had 10 minutes before. Maybe nobody wanted to rob that farmhouse at all. Maybe somebody wanted to know if a courier driving alone at night on a route nobody official had logged would go unnoticed, whether anybody would come looking if he didn't come back, whether the road was watched, whether a man like me, nobody special, just trying to get home to his family, made a good test. And if that dedication on the radio was real, if somebody really had called that in using my name, then whoever set this up already knew more about me than a stranger should. I didn't wait around the Conoco long. I got back on the highway and drove straight for town, checking my mirrors more than I probably should have while doing 60 on a 2-lane road. Nothing followed me. No truck, no headlights hanging back, just empty road and Christmas lights starting to reappear in windows as I got closer to Springfield. I stopped at the courier office instead of going straight home. Pete had stayed, waiting for me, looking about as unsettled as I felt. We called the sheriff's non-emergency line together. A deputy took the report over the phone, polite but not exactly alarmed. A driver who felt uneasy on a delivery, a mismatched mailbox, a voice through a door, a shape in the trees that might have been nothing. There wasn't a clear violation to point to. No one had touched me. No one had threatened me outright. He said he'd note it and have someone drive out that way when they had a car free. Pete looked over the route slip again after I hung up. "This phone number," he said, tapping the top corner. "I'm gonna try calling it back." He dialed it right there in the office. It rang twice and then gave that flat tone that meant the line was already disconnected, less than an hour after somebody had supposedly called in an order on it. I got home a little after 9 that night. Emily was already half asleep on the couch, fighting to stay up for Santa, and Carol had saved me a plate of dinner in the oven. I paid off that bicycle 2 days later, on the 26th, when Sears reopened, and I never told Emily any of it. I never told her why her daddy held on to her a little too long and a little too tight that Christmas Eve when he finally got home. I never found out who E. Hollis was, or if that was even a real name. Later on, when I mentioned the address to a fella who used to run routes out that direction, he told me the Hollis place was supposed to be sitting empty, that the old woman who owned it had gone into a nursing home in town some time back. But when I called around trying to confirm it, nobody at the home could tell me for certain whether a woman by that name was even still living, let alone whether she'd been out at that farmhouse on Christmas Eve. The county record showed the property hadn't changed hands and wasn't listed as rented. Nobody could tell me who'd signed that slip or whose voice I'd heard behind that door. As far as I could ever piece together, there shouldn't have been anyone home to answer at all. The strangest part came the following December. A Christmas card showed up in our mailbox, no return address, postmarked from a town about 40 miles from where that farmhouse sat. Inside, in handwriting I didn't recognize, it just said, "Glad you made it home safe last year. tell Emily her bike looks nice. We never let it ride in front of the house after that. Carol had me put it away in the garage every night from then on. To this day, I don't know who wrote that card or how they knew what Emily's bicycle looked like or why. I've thought about it every December since, usually right around the time I'm driving home from a late shift, checking my mirrors a little more than I used to.